This podcast is part of the How We Are network. For information on this episode and many other like-minded shows, visit howweare.org. That's HOWWEARE.org.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of 100 Words or Less, the podcast. I'm your host, Ray Harkins. Thank you for joining us on this fine afternoon, morning, night, whenever you're listening to this. I know a lot of people listen at work. What are you doing? Are you able to be productive while I am talking to you? I know myself, I can't listen to podcasts or anybody talking to me while I'm working, whether it's writing emails or whatever the case may be. It just distracts me. Kudos. I appreciate that. On the episode today is Jon Vigil, the vocalist slash frontman slash hype dude. Yeah, I guess he's a hype dude because essentially that's kind of what vocalists are. For a band called The Ghost Inside, a modern metalcore, hardcore, whatever you'd like to label them as, something core. More on him in a minute. Let's talk some business and get some stuff out of the way. I don't know if you noticed last week, but we had a cool ad. Audible, yeah? Why don't you sign up for a free book? audiblepodcast.com/100 words. That was just a free plug for them. But if they see that a lot of people have signed up for them, it gets you a free book, then it helps the show. They will take out more ads and just make me millions of dollars because that's essentially all I'm in it for. PropertyofZach.com, our continued partners. They post the show. We love their website. They post information about new releases, tours, whatever you need from independent music, find there. PropertyofZach.com. Review the show. Go to the iTunes store. Write some nice words. We've had some people picking up the pace recently in the new year, and I am paying attention to you, so thank you very much. There's people who are giving shout-outs in their review to me in regards to, oh, I know you read this, so hey, what's up? I appreciate that. And visit the website, 100wordspodcast.com. You'll find some other tidbits that happen throughout the week. Just another place to hang out. And I like hanging out. But there are a lot of other changes that are coming to the show. People have been emailing me, 100wordspodcast@gmail.com. Some, changes. Whether they'd like to see something more, something less, different guests, whatever the case may be. I'm kind of trying to incorporate some of that. So if you have suggestions, please email the show. Always love to hear from you. Something else that's been on my mind recently, I just took a trip to the beautiful island of Maui in Hawaii. Was able to, unplug and focus on real life stuff for a moment. And, actually enjoy my family and hang out with my parents and my wife and my kid and all that other stuff. It was so nice to be able to do that. I know it sounds stupid where it's like, oh yeah, vacation, of course it's nice. You're in fucking Hawaii, that's great. But to be able to kind of look at things in a new light and look at something that is such a stable thing in your life and get excited about it. Whether that's a relationship, I mean, for me, that's what it was, or whether it was, whether it's something else in your life that's, whether it's your parents or whatever, something that's it's been in my life forever. How the fuck do I get excited about that again? And it's funny because it's here we are 90 some odd episodes into a podcast. So that's a lot of time that I've been able to do this, and a lot of you have shared on that journey. And it's how do you get excited about this? That's kind of one of the topics of conversation that I actually have with John this week is just how do you stay excited about something that you're so entrenched in for such a long period of time? It's either you have to do it yourself, whether, a shifting of perspective, or whether that's rededicating yourself to whatever it is that you're into, just being okay, kind of a rut right now. I'm going to push through it, and I'm going to do what I can to make this new, make this fresh, make this exciting, because after all, that's what life is about. You kind of need that push, because otherwise, if you fall in the rut and stay in the rut, I mean, you're in it. Life sucks. You're in this maze, and you constantly go around not having any sort of real, true joy, and just kind of, whatever existing. And that's the worst. And that's over the, maybe the past 4 or 5 months, I've kind of felt that in some ways. And so I am fucking pumped. So I just wanted to share that with you. Jon Vigil. So I have known him for quite some time, and I had him on a previous podcast that I did with some friends. He's just, he's a very introspective and thoughtful guy, and I was excited to have him. He came over to my house, and we had a very, very nice chat. Even though we chatted about some super heavy stuff, it was all very meaningful, and I learned a lot about him, and I think you will enjoy it. I mean, for one, he's obviously in a popular band, but for two, he's definitely a real dude. When I say these people, a lot of us have a tendency to put people in bands on some sort of weird pedestal where it's like, oh yeah, that's who they are. And yeah, they're real humans, but we don't have a tendency to think about people in that perspective. So that's what the whole point of this show is, to basically just be like, this, whatever struggles you're having are exactly what all of us are having. Because of that, it makes, and myself included, feel less alone. You're like, okay, we're all in this kind of weird life struggle together. So anyways, without further delay, here is my conversation with Jon Vigil, and I will talk to you afterwards.
Grab a hold of me, I got my arms up, pull me out from this darkness. It's so hard for me to see, right on the end of that tunnel. If it's a war, you can't see.
No,
I was like, that kid, I see that kid every show, he sucks.
no, it's actually quite the contrary, because it's one of those things. I mean, I'm sure you see this obviously from yourself at shows where it's like the impression that I always got of you was just like, I mean, I obviously completely, and for every right reason, you were just like, oh, you're one of those El Segundo kids. Yeah. And it was always this, instantaneously, that area was supportive of Taken, just more so than Orange County, because that they were obviously into the, Bleeding Through and Throwdowns, not I don't know, it was just weird. It was like, why are these kids from the South Bay just yeah, we love what you got going on. It was cool. And so I obviously put you as a part of that. But the thing that always struck me about you individually was just you were enthusiastic, but you were I guess for lack of a better term, cool about it. You had this balance about yourself where you weren't I didn't feel like you were going up to me and punishing me or anything like that. Because I mean, I
made it a very, very good point to not do that,
And it's weird to have that, because I mean, I think everybody goes through that, no matter where you're at in your life, where you're just man, I really like the work that person does, but then I don't want to do that. But when you're young, you very rarely have a filter.
Yeah.
You're just oh, here's everything.
Yeah, no, dude, I know exactly what you mean, man.
But it was something that struck me whatever. I mean, whether I attribute it to maturity or you having the cognizance to be nah, okay, I should I'll make myself known, we're cool, because you see me everywhere, but I'm not going to do that to you. And I think that the thing that impressed me about that was obviously once I started to see you, start a band up and start to get out there and just do it. It was one of those things where it was that enthusiasm translated to that, because some people have that enthusiasm really quickly and then they're gone within a year.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say a lot of people that you came up with, but a lot of people that just get into independent music at that age, they get burnt out so quickly. And absolutely. I mean, it's is it one of those things where it's obviously, you've been in it so long that you're not ever going to give up. But what kind of kept you in that to where you didn't get burnt out or jaded or anything from that perspective initially?
The feeling I got from going to shows and stuff, it's kind of, I almost can't describe it. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure you know the feeling of seeing, looking forward to a show, weeks, months, in advance, and finally getting there, and then just feeling just the excitement, just overtake you, I mean, I don't mean to use Taken as a reference, okay. But going to Taken shows.
I'll take it.
Yeah. But going to Taken shows, I would get chills, watching you guys play, I remember the first time I heard, Best I Had, I was, blown away. Right. I was I didn't know, I didn't understand that music could give that feeling to anybody, you know what I mean? Uh-huh. And that was one of the first songs that I ever really noticed it with about, I just, the feeling I got from that, I didn't ever want to, because at the time I was, I mean, even now I'm straight edge, At the time I was straight edge, and I didn't really have an outlet to, surround myself with something I did with music, Right. I couldn't be so, a lot of, some of my friends who weren't so much in the scene, got real big into drugs or got real big into sports or, nothing really kind of grabbed me. And then, music, when going to shows,
that just opened up the door.
It was just, that's all it was. That's all I,
And it, I mean, for people like you and I, it is weird to see that whole, that whole burnout where it's just people do, because obviously this is what we are involved in is youth culture based, And by the time that you're of a reasonable age, between 22 and 25, you're expected to move on in some capacity.
100%.
And it's always, you know, and so it's like you don't look at those people, you don't look at people that do that, and you're just like, oh, why'd you do that? You're like, why am I still doing it?
Exactly.
It's
exactly.
that self-reflection. You're like, how come I haven't moved on from this?
Yeah, 100%. I've definitely looked back at the times where, you know, the kind of music friends that I grew up with kind of dwindled and, you know, like exponentially. And it makes sense, you know. People are like, you know, this is fun, but I can't do this for the rest of my life, you know.
Right.
I think it takes, you know, certain kind of people who can do this for the rest of their lives, whether it's in one field or another, whether it's starting a label or, you know, working for a band or being in a band or something, like to surround yourself with something like this. I think it's not for everybody, you know. And when you first get into music, you like it's something that you feel the camaraderie and you feel like it's your world. And then once you kind of see that there's more to the world than just the music scene, then you're like, okay. And then I can keep this here and visit it when I want to, but I got this other stuff going on, you know? Right. And for me, it's like, you know, as corny as it sounds, like all I've ever really wanted to do was to be in a band. My father was a musician and played in bands his whole life. And I remember going to see him play, and I was just like, oh, I really want to do this. This is so cool, you know?
What style of music did he play? I mean, obviously hardcore.
Clearly hardcore.
Clearly hardcore.
No, it's funny because he never really played original music. He was only in really cover bands. Yeah, but
which is common of that generation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. He was in. It's kind of funny.
Yeah,
he's in a Rolling Stones cover band called the Rolling Clones.
I was gonna say because it's like you have the Iron Maidens. Like you just have these little tweaks, but they're just so good.
Yeah. So he was in the Rolling Clones.
Love it.
And you know, I'd see him go play a bar sometimes, and you know, when I was younger, and
what did he play guitar?
He played guitar, yeah. Nice. He played guitar and did backup singing. And he, I saw him play it I think he played at Six Flags or Knott's Berry Farm one time, and I was like, oh, my dad's a rock star. I was like, he made it. He's like,
this is the pinnacle.
Yeah. You know, and I don't know, just being there, I was like,
how old were you in that time when you started to like witness your dad play on stage?
I was young. I was probably like 10.
Okay.
10, 11.
Yeah, so enough to be aware of what was happening.
I was at a real impressionable age too, you know? Like you know, I think a lot of people kind of that's the start of when they get into something big, you know, their early teen, you know.
Oh, totally. The formative years of when you have stuff that you start to kind of, you know, crack your head open a little and be like, whoa, like what's that? Yeah. Like starts to tickle something and you're just like, I wasn't aware that existed. Were you born and raised in the South Bay area?
Well, I was born in the South Bay, and then we had moved to the Valley. So I lived in Thousand Oaks.
Okay, yeah.
Kind of like Ventura area.
Sure.
Until I was in, I think, 5th grade, and then I moved to El Segundo, which is right by the LAX airport in the South Bay and stuff. So I've lived there since then. And
what precipitated the move like to the Valley and then back to El Segundo?
My dad he was a plumber.
Okay.
And he got a very big promotion, kind of going from being kind of like an underling kind of thing to you know, manning his own truck to being kind of like a head guy. So he, you know, took the job, and it kind of, he didn't want to commute anymore either because he was commuting for a while. He was kind of driving from the Valley to the South Bay, back to the Valley every day, and I was
brutal.
And he hated it. He was like, "This is terrible." So we just moved to the South Bay.
And what did your mom do for a living?
At the time, my mom was just a homemaker. She didn't have a job. She was just took care of me and my brother.
Right, keeping you guys in check.
Keeping us in line. You know?
Right. And your brother was younger?
My brother was younger, yeah.
Yeah.
Cool dynamic, because, you know, we always had a parent there to kind of help us with whatever we need help with. And, you know, when Dad got home, you know, we'd have dinner together and stuff. So it was
a pretty tight family structure from that perspective.
Absolutely.
So then, as you obviously started to grow up and, you know, your head started to be cracked open in regards to, you know, the idea of like immediately identifying, like, because it's interesting that you say that, because usually it's like, I mean, I guess that age, your dad is still your hero in the sense, like, you haven't hated him yet, like, you know, because obviously everybody goes through that phase of
the
like,
angsty teen.
Yeah, like, whatever. Yeah,
they don't get me. They don't understand me.
Of course, whatever my dad do is the worst. So that was obviously precipitate, or, you know, before that. But it's just interesting that you saw that and you were just like, yeah, man, I want to do what my dad does.
Yeah.
Like,
I was just I was so into it.
Did he ever, like, once you obviously started to, you know, attempt to start bands and do that, like, was he super pumped that you were doing that?
Supportive from the get-go.
Yeah.
From day one. Like, it's weird because my dad had played guitar his entire life, and I never picked up on it. I never played an instrument. So I think he wanted me to play guitar.
Oh, I can almost guarantee that.
Yeah, 100%. But then I think once he found out, like, he could tell that I just could memorize song lyrics, and you know, I could just sing along to stuff that like, you know, little kids shouldn't be able to sing along to or shouldn't like recognize the words.
Right.
Nothing like vulgar, just like stuff that's like, you know, kind of.
You went immediately for the lyrics and the vocals.
100%. Went straight to it. I gravitated towards that, and I think once I started a band, you know, he didn't really understand the kind of music we were playing, but he got it. He's like, you know what, this is what the youth of today is doing. Like, he fully knew what straight edge was. Like, he knew what I was about and what I was doing, and so he was supportive of it. He knew that I wasn't out there, you know, making a mess of my life. I was trying to actually do something with it.
Right,
you know?
right.
So
no, it's always interesting to have that parent have somewhat of a perspective in regards to like what it's like to, you know, perform on stage. Basic as that sounds, to have that understanding. If a parent hasn't gone through that, like, they're obviously immediately going to react just like, oh, you're just gonna throw your life away, John. Like, way to go, dude.
Absolutely. I think a big reason why I'm still in music today is definitely my dad.
Yeah.
If it was for him, I mean, my mom was supportive too. She just didn't have the musician bug, I guess. You know, she didn't have the kind of drive and the kind of like, you know, excitement for it as like my dad did. So he was supportive of it. It was awesome. He was fully into me quitting a full-time job to go on tour and lose money and do all that kind of, you know, right. As to start a band. It takes forever, man. I'd come home with no money and have to borrow money from him and stuff. And he knew the price it took, you know. So
right.
He was cool.
And then as you were as you started to go into high school, I presume, like, was junior high school, is that when like independent music started to like kind of infiltrate what you were doing?
Mm-hmm. I think it was a transition from 8th grade to high school is when I got the Offspring smash, and I got like Green Day. I got real big into like records like that, like Dookie and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, this is cool, you know, like it's still on the radio,
right?
You know, because it was like, that's kind of how the exposure that I got. I was like, this is like kind of different from most of the radio music, and it's kind of more aggressive,
right? Bands
like that were the transition into bands like NoFX and Minor Threat and you know, Black Flag and bands like that, to where it's like a more underground punk.
Of course.
Then
it gives you it's like that's obviously, it's like the gateway stuff. It gives you the taste, and then like you can totally find yourself being like, I need something like harder, more aggressive. Like you don't know how to express it, but you're just like, I think I need more. Like, I don't know where to find. Oh, I found this, and then where else do I? Yeah. It's like it just starts to gnaw away.
100%. And then, you know, it went from that to you know, hardcore, and then kind of just all over. You know?
Were you in school, like, did you give a shit about it? Were you like, as far as like, you know, your studies were concerned, and did your parents, you know, like, impress on you, like, okay, you need to get an education, like, you may want to do the band stuff, but you need to get education? Like, how did that all transpire? And were you terrible about it? Were you like, because you strike me as a guy that like is easy to get along with, but like just kind of don't get in my way, like, and not in a dick way, but just like in a like, let me do this, like, let me handle this.
That's definitely the kind of guy I am. I think I'm, you know, I once I get my mindset on something, once I'm like, I got this, you know, don't bother me, I got it, you know.
Right.
As far as schoolwork, I don't know, I never really applied myself as much as I should have in school.
Sure.
Looking back now, you know, it was more so about hanging out and kind of just
when's the next show?
And graduate. Right. Looking forward to the weekend and go to shows and stuff. And I didn't get horrible grades, but I wasn't a good student by any means. I didn't like doing homework. I just would go home, listen to music, and go skateboarding. Like,
right.
Screw that. Yeah. So I never got like, you know,
Was it like, did you try to find the level of where your parents were cool with what you got? Like, okay, we can tolerate these grades. We wish for better.
Yeah, that's exactly the point I was at. My parents were like, well, you're not a bad student, but you're not, I mean, you're going to graduate, but
you're on no honor roll.
Yeah, exactly. You're kind of just going, you know.
Right.
So I mean, at the end of high school, before I got real serious into playing bands and stuff, I'd been going to shows and stuff. I went to community college for like a year and a half.
Okay, got it.
I was studying like computer stuff, like I was going to do web design and and all that kind of stuff, and
that interested you at the time.
Yeah, for sure. And then, you know, once I started playing shows, I was like, I'm not going to school anymore.
Because was A Dying Dream your very first band?
Mm-hmm.
That's not fair. Like, I mean, not like A Dying Dream was obviously like revolutionary in any way, shape, or form, but you guys were pretty together for being a young band.
Yeah.
Like, and that band name isn't terrible. Like, I mean, it's like for all the band names that existed during that time.
True.
Like,
it's not completely horrible. I mean, looking back now, I'm like, oh man, what were we thinking? But it's cool. Like, I'm kind of like proud to say that I've only ever been in one band.
I know.
A Dying Dream, my first and only band, and then we changed our name to The Ghost instead. So I don't know if that technically counts or not. Because I mean, it is a different band. But
it is. But I mean, but stylistically, it's not like you can trace the lineage. Like you can listen to what you did back then versus what you're doing now, and be like, oh, I see like components of what that was. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I would classify that as one band.
Cool. Yeah. So I mean, yeah, that's a cool feeling, you know.
Yeah, it is because usually, I mean, my first band was called Doom Society.
Yeah,
and we were absolutely terrible doing covers at birthday parties and just like and playing covers that like it's not like we were playing like birthday party covers. We're doing like Battery and Chain of Strength, and it's like who wants to hear that a fucking 16-year-old?
Nobody.
No,
I guarantee you, nobody.
We hardly wanted to hear ourselves do a terrible cover of it. So, but A Dying Dream, did that start to exist like towards the end of high school or like after?
Yeah, once I graduated, I was working, going to community college, and my friend's band was actually a Dying Dream.
Right.
And they had just kicked out their singer, and they were like, hey, like, we need a new singer. Like, would you want to do it? At the time, I had never sang. I'd never done anything.
Right.
Like, as far as I was concerned, when singers would hand me the mic, my voice would be terrible.
Right. Yeah.
I'd be like, oh, trying to scream along,
Those are some of my favorite parts where it's just like you hear it, like you're watching a band, sing along goes on, just like and you're like, oh, who's that kid?
Yeah, that was that kid. So I was like, oh god, how's this gonna pan out for me? I'm gonna get kicked out of this band in like a week.
Right.
It's crazy too because I remember the very first show before I even joined. They're like, we have a show in a couple weeks. We're playing at the Whiskey with Himsa. And I think it was Zayo, with Himsa and Zayo.
Okay.
And we had to sell like 200 tickets or something retarded.
All just the best pay to play.
Exactly. We like signed a contract saying we'd give them like, $4,000 or whatever collectively it came out to or whatever. But all that stuff. So my first show was like, at like a legitimate venue with like legitimate sound and stuff. And I was like, I made it. Look at this. I'm playing in Hollywood.
Yeah. Oh, the Sunset Strip, bro.
Yeah, sick. I'm famous. And I remember that show. I remember like I was totally fine, totally cool, and then people started showing up, and then I was like freaking out. I was like, "Holy crap! I have to sing in front of these people. Like this isn't a joke. Like I can't just be the kid jumping on other kids and just having a good time. I have to be the one to
get up there. Everyone's
looking at me.
Right.
That freaks me out. So before going on stage, I was like pacing. I was like sweating. I was like, oh my god, I can't do this.
Right.
I was like, should I just quit the band right now? Like what do I do?
Should I quit? That'd be amazing. First show. Sorry, I guys can't do this.
I told you I could sing for you guys. Yeah, well, I can't. So
about that.
See you later. I'm out of here. I mean, the first show was funny
because you think this is a good idea when you're a kid. You filmed your first show.
Huh?
Did you film that show?
My dad did. Yeah.
Okay.
And he was so proud of me.
Oh,
he was
of course.
So proud. He's like,
He's like, you can't stop that.
He played the Whiskey. Like, you know how many bands played at the Whiskey? We just list these bands. I'm like, yeah, Dad. Yeah, they played there too. Cool.
Because then you look back at that video and you're just like, oh my god, like there should never be documentation of this. But of course, I can understand from your dad's perspective where it's like, of course I have to get little Johnny Boy jumping around on stage.
Of course.
Did the whole family come, or just your dad came?
My dad and my mom came.
Got it.
And they were super super proud of me. Like all of our parents came to that show. And
of course,
it was cool.
How much younger was your little brother?
He was 4 years younger than me.
Okay, got it. But he wasn't allowed at the show.
I don't remember why he didn't come, but he wasn't there.
Sure.
He was doing something. He was like, I think it was when I was 20 or 21.
Okay, when he watched you play for the first time.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he was around 16, 17.
Something that I've always noticed, especially like over the past. Whatever, 2.5 years. It's been really interesting. Like, I mean, it's always fun for me to watch people like yourself or, like Jeremy from Touche, like whatever, all these people that we've grown up with and obviously are becoming successful in some, are achieving some notoriety. Just because like we, myself, I've always felt like I've just had this like front row seat of like, not only knowing the people that are involved, but then like knowing the scene they've grown up with. And so it's funny for you guys because I feel like The Ghost Inside falls right into this middle ground of being not hardcore enough for the hardcore kids, but being too hardcore for some other kids that are like, whatever, I know you guys have toured with them, but like A Day to Remember, where it's like, it's like, oh, you yell a lot. Like there's not very much singing.
Yeah.
And so it's like, you guys are obviously like, have become successful at being that band that falls in that crack.
Yeah.
But have you felt like that ever since, like, you guys obviously, especially from like when the Epitaph audience started to pay attention to you guys. Have you felt like that band in the middle of being like, well, I guess we're just doing our own thing?
Yeah,
right here?
yeah. I mean, Sort of. I mean, I've always considered us a hardcore band solely because of the lyrics. You know, to me, hardcore is much more of a mentality and more of a feeling and like a sense of being as opposed to a sound. You know?
Right. I mean, you get what I'm saying though, where it's just like there's kids who are just like, you know, your typical Bridge 9 kid is gonna be like, oh, fucking Ghost inside.
Yeah, no way.
Like, dude, when we announced Sound and Fury, like we put that out there because it's like, oh, cool, the Ghost inside is playing Sound and Fury, and it's like, what? Why would they not?
Yeah.
It's just that it's that disconnect because I mean I'm like you where it's just like do you actually know the people that are involved in this music, like like the people that make up the Ghost inside, like they are hardcore kids, and by definition of the term it should apply.
Like there's always sticklers like that, you know, who are so into like I guess just kind of defending what they believe in, you know, and I get that, and I totally understand those those kids who are so into hardcore and like. You know, they don't want it to get tainted, and dude, like I fully get that. You know,
would have done that at their age, maybe.
100%. And I just, you know, we do kind of ride the line. You know, we're not a straight up hardcore band, you know, and we're not like a Day to Remember kind of band.
Right,
you know, you said we are in the middle, and I don't think it's a hard place to be. I think it does us more good than we think. You know,
sure,
because I think that kind of appeals to kids who like a Day to Remember, but kind of want something heavier. They're like, you know, like. Day to Remember's cool, and I'm having a good time, you know, like rocking out to them. But I need, like you said, I need something more. I kind of want something more gritty, you know. Right. And then, you know, we open for them, and then there's kids who are like, "You're the heaviest band in the whole world," like, get all, and then get all into us, and that's cool for us, you know. And we'll go on tour with, you know, hardcore, like straight up hardcore bands, and you know, we'll kind of impress people, you know. And I think a lot of people who hear the name or kind of just listen to some songs in the kind of the background and don't really understand. I think once they see us, you know, I think they kind of get why we kind of ride that line and why some people think we're a hardcore band, some people, you know, might think we're something else, and I think it does us more good than bad.
I think, and something that I've noticed too, where it's like, I think you guys have had to quote unquote prove yourself. I mean, obviously you've had to prove yourself because it's like a band that releases, you know, 3 full lengths and all of a sudden people are like, oh, they're pretty good. Like that doesn't obviously happen a lot of the times. It takes, you know, I mean, it takes maybe a full length and all of a sudden they're the hottest shit ever. But like I remember that 10 for 10 tour where it's like, I really did feel not even like, I wouldn't even say desperation, but just like the art, like we got to fucking make an impression. Yeah. And like
100%.
We like, this could be our moment to like legitimize ourselves in some, you know, semblance of a scene, and not like in a way like, oh, please accept us. But like, we want to impress this upon these people.
100%. That's, I think that's for us. We at the time we were touring with a lot of our favorite bands.
Right.
Bane is one of my like all-time favorite hardcore bands. You know, really love Crime and Stereo. Right. Poison the Well was on that tour. Madball did a couple of weeks of it. Like, you know, like huge bands. You know, we were like a relatively brand new band. You know, so we went on that tour thinking like, okay, like this is a genuine shot for us. You know, we could either fuck this up or we can do it. You know, we could do it right. We could be ourselves. We could just give everything we got and try to impress people, and that's what we did. You know, we just played shows like we wanted to play them, and if kids were into them, cool. If they weren't, then, you know, then I guess we just weren't gonna. It wasn't gonna help us, you know.
I know, and it's something that impresses me about it too. Like the way that you guys approach it, it's very, for lack of a better term, like the bravado that, because like when you do start to increase your audience, like to, you know, what you guys are at now, where it's like you can play the Glass House and you can sell it out, you know, in these like 800 to 1200 capacity rooms, there is a certain level of like. You know, once you've got to there, like you need to be this certain thing, like on stage, where it's like, okay, John, like you have to, you know, say like fuck some shit up right here or whatever. Like you do these, like, you know, you fall into these patterns, like from a, you know, a band perspective. I don't know, you've always seemed to like strip it away in some, you know, some capacity where it's like you may say a few of the same things each night of a tour, but a majority of it is just going to be like, you know, you with a microphone on stage. Like, I don't know, it's just this weird like. You guys have tried to subvert that in a way, but like I don't know if that was like if that's intentional or that obviously just comes out because that's who you are. Like,
yeah, I think it's more so just because of who we are. You know, I think and style of the bands too. I think bands who get, you know, big, like you said, off one record, who kind of just they kind of don't know any better. You know, they put out an album and they're huge, and they go from being, you know, this band that, you know, plays like kind of cool shows to being like playing huge shows, and they don't know the steps that it takes. They don't realize, you know, the kind of, we don't need all this flashy stuff and all these, you know, all this crazy production, because we just, like, when it comes down to it, we just want to play for the people that paid to see us, you know?
Right.
Like, people, like, I'll look into the crowd and I'll see myself in kids, like, going to, like, taking shows or going to whatever shows and being like, being the kid who's just so just invested in this thing, you know, and like that for me is enough to know that like I want to put on the best show. Like I want to be able to play our songs and interact with these people in the best way that I can to make sure that they want to keep coming back and they have a good time at these shows and they don't feel like they got, you know, like
it's a genuine experience.
Exactly.
Because I do feel like it's like there are certain facades that just like you put up natural. Well, not you in particular, but like bands put up just naturally because of either the size of the room they play or just like the way that it is, where it's like you have to, you know, say the name of the like, what the fuck's up, promoter, whatever. Like you have to say these certain things, and not to say that like there's anything necessarily wrong with that, but it's like then that's when it just becomes like that pattern, and you get locked into something, and it kind of removes you from that exact thing that you're talking about of like just looking out in the crowd and being like oh man, there was me like 7 years ago or whatever, you know. Because then it just becomes then I feel like that's kind of when it becomes like more of a you know a task or a job than the actual enjoyment of the process of being in a band.
100%. And I think that for us, like, you know, like you said, we played a show and sold out the Glass House, and we've also not long before that, or even I think we did a headline tour, sold out the Glass House, and then we played Aladdin Juniors as a secret show down the street from Glass House, which is like 200 cap, you know, tiny room, no barriers, like whatever. Like that's like we're a kind of band that just wants to play, and like it doesn't matter if we're up there on a huge stage playing with thousands of people or in a small club face to face, you know, getting sweaty and you know bleeding with people. Like that's like that. It doesn't matter. Like we're up there.
That's what you did for years and years and years before anybody cared.
Exactly. Yeah. You know what I mean? We did that. Like I think for us, it's we're almost blessed in the fact that you know we didn't put out our first record and become huge, big, successful. You know, like we've seen the growth, we've seen the progression, we've kind of pushed that boulder up the hill. You know, and like we're at a point where we're kind of reaching the top, and we're kind of like, I mean, not the top, like we're you know, that's not
like you too, basically.
But like exactly. No, but I mean, like you know, we're reaching a point where we're very, very content with the progress we made as a band. You know, and I think that any kind of goal we've ever had at being in a band, we've far surpassed, you know, so we're kind of like, you know, kind of reaping the benefits of it now, playing these bigger shows and kind of just staying the people we are and remembering what it's like to not have fans, but playing these big shows and kind of being like, yeah, we worked for this.
Yeah, we built this.
I'm proud of this.
Right. Yeah, we built this on our own and on our own backs and our own musical vision. So yeah, we need to appreciate it.
Yeah, and not to sound, you know, cocky or anything. It's just we don't want to squander that. You know, we don't want to blow that up with like light show and these smoke cannons and confetti and all this stuff, and you know that stuff is cool for a lot of bands, it you know I don't know if we'll ever be that kind of band or that is just that's gonna work for us. I think the people that like the Ghost Inside and like really love the Ghost Inside see through all that stuff. You know? They know that we are just plugged into the amps.
Yeah, plug and play. Here we go.
That's what we are. You know, we're not like a flashy band. Like, you know, like, and it's just. It's worked for us, and that's what we are, and that's what we grew up on. So
that's what you continue to do.
Stick with it.
I think almost every person that has probably done an interview with you always mentions, you know, just like the idea of like we were talking about earlier, where it's like it takes a certain person to tour and blah blah blah. And this whole idea of like, you know, it's you obviously you don't spend any real time at home to develop relationships and like exist like. You know, because obviously as you do it more and more, I always put it like this, where it's just like, it's, you know, you're in like a suspended state of animation. You're living a life, but you're not living quote unquote life, if that makes sense. Like the things that you do to try to remind yourself that you exist in this other culture of like, hey, I'm going to live a life like outside of this band. Do you have to remind yourself a lot about that? Or is it just one of those things where it's like, you know, kind of taking a day at a time, so to speak?
Yeah, I've also said the same kind of thing. I've kind of tried to describe people what we do and what it's like. You know, like I would say that my life is kind of stagnant. It's I'm the same.
Oh, you put it on pause. Yeah, you put it on pause.
I'm the same spot. I'm the same person I've been for the past 8 or 9 years.
Yeah.
You know, and that's kind of weird to think about. You know, and there's a whole other aspect of my life that's just grown, like, you know, just so much has happened.
Right.
That was a big part of our second record, Returners. Was I was on tour a lot. We had toured our first record 2 years straight, nonstop. You know, and the whole idea behind Returners was we'd kind of come back to this place that we call home. You know, this like what, you know, and the things that make home were so different. from when we left, you know, like friends wouldn't be friends anymore, and like you'd be like, what, you guys aren't friends anymore? Or you'd come back and you know, your favorite places to go eat would be torn down, you know, and a new thing would be, you know, there in its place. And you know, I remember one time it hit me really, really, really hard when I realized that my life was stagnant while everyone else's life was still going.
Right.
I left for tour, you know, gave my parents a hug and kiss, said, I love you, Dad, I'll see you later. Come back from tour, and he had gray hair.
Yeah.
In like a 2-month span of when I left. And it freaked me out.
Of course, I could totally imagine
and that was the first time that I realized that life is not waiting for me.
Oh yeah.
It's happening.
Totally.
Life is going.
Right, exactly.
Whether I'm there with it or not.
Right, yeah. And I mean, nothing is more apparent to that than when you get yanked back into some semblance of reality when, like, you know, whatever, a loved one passes away, where it's just like, I mean, I distinctly remember being in, like, you know, the like fucking like Nebraska or something and getting a call that, you know, my stepfather's father, so my grandfather, was dying, and like trying to figure out flights to get to a place, couldn't figure it out in order to like canceling dates and whatever, just like talking with everybody, trying to make it work. It didn't work. But then having that, like I said, yank you back into reality, and like having like, oh, time has passed.
Yeah.
And like, there's just those things of where like, what, you know, like I always said, those anchors that you try to place down at home, like in order to kind of remind you of what, not saying that band life is not important, but just being like, well, this will ultimately be where I land.
Exactly.
And like, how do you remain there while being away from it, you know?
Yeah, you get so submerged in this lifestyle. You get so submerged and so into what you're doing that like you said, you kind of don't remember that stuff is going on, you know? And you get a call saying, you know, someone's sick and they're dying, or hey man, like I'm getting married, you know, next month. You should come to the wedding. You're like, I'm going to be on the other side of the world. I'm going to be across the country. I can't be there, man. Like, and it's just like, it's so hard to kind of put that into perspective and to be like going on tour is quote unquote your job.
Right.
And when you're not on tour, it's, I guess, vacation. Or
right.
like if it ever could be, you know, like
right.
It's a weird thing to say. It's a weird concept. And I think that people get so into touring that they kind of, they lose sight of what, that there's a life and there's a world, and that you're ultimately going to come back to this place, you know? Like, this isn't going to last forever, especially a hardcore band.
And I mean? Yeah, and I feel like so many people, like, they just figure out ways to keep that paused. Like, you know, like just be like, well, I'll figure this out. I'll go on the road. I'll tech for a band or whatever. And it's just like, there are certain times where it's like you wish that someone could sit down with them and just be like, you don't need to do this anymore. Mm-hmm. There's other opportunities.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's like, then it's like, you see the, and not like there's anything wrong that people that dedicate themselves to the road, because obviously those are people that are needed to make things function.
Yeah, absolutely.
But then you do feel that sense of just like, oh man, like just basic life shit you've just never experienced. And like, that's, in some respects, that's probably a bummer. Mm-hmm. The concept of where you guys are at right now, where it's just like, you know, it's taken you fucking forever, like for a long time to kind of build that to where you're at now. Like, do people still come up to you and have that notion that like, oh, you guys are like, you know, you're a new band. Like I saw you on Warped Tour last year, and like you guys have one full length out, right?
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of people who have gotten in the band and kind of don't know our backstory or don't know our history and don't really know we have other albums out, you know. And you know, it's so weird because I feel like we're a band that if you're into our band, you're like into our band, you know. Like there's not people, like I don't meet a lot of people who are like, yeah, Ghost Inside, yeah, you guys are cool, man. It's either like, oh my god, you're my favorite band, like you've done this for me, like I have this song tattooed on me, like I have all your albums, this and this and this. Right. Or people who are like, yeah, it's not my thing, man. You know, whatever. Like that's fine. Like it's very rare that I meet like a kind of in between. Yeah. Kind of like yeah, you guys are cool, man. Like I got your last album.
Right.
You know?
And that's it.
So it's like it's weird to get people like, you know, the Warped Tour crowd, like you said, you know, people who have no idea who we are, just passing by, like
you just get dropped in the middle. Yeah.
No, I like this kind of music. Let me watch this band. I'm gonna buy their album, you know, and then they kind of don't research it and they kind of don't know there's anything else to it. Those are the kind of people who are just like, just kind of whatever about it.
Yeah, it's like you're essentially at that point like just a mode of entertainment, and like obviously that's needed. Mm-hmm. Like that's why music exists in the first place. But it is weird for bands like you guys to exist within like this proverbial scene where like there's a lineage, there's a history, there's a reason it exists. Like we're not just getting up there to be like watch us dance and we're fucking cool.
Yeah,
it's just funny. I'm sure for you to like obviously have to interact with people of that nature and still and probably in certain ways like force yourself to relate to them on some level. Mm-hmm. Like even though you may be so removed from like your own personal experiences to be like, okay, well I can put myself in this mindset. Let's figure this out. Let's have a genuine moment here.
Yeah.
Obviously, like because your brother passed away, correct? Mm-hmm. I mean, the impact that had on your life, like it's interesting to me, like because you seem because I've known you for a long time, you seem like you'll talk to anybody and you'll share anything, but you also seem reserved in some fashions as well, where it's like you have to know a person to a certain level to kind of let them in, mm-hmm. but at the same time you're also you're not bashful about sharing your opinions on social networks and what mm-hmm. have you. And like when you were sharing the fact that your brother passed away on your social networks, it was one of those things that it kind of struck me as this seems different than what you would
give off
normally do. Yeah. And like just because you may have done that months after the fact or whatever, but the fact that you were kind of experiencing it and like did you feel like that was sort of out of character for yourself?
Yeah, a little bit. I'm a pretty reserved guy. I kind of try to keep a little bit of my normal life to myself. I don't like to kind of go and share my, this is what I'm doing today with kind of the world, like that's not really ever been really my thing, But my brother passed, so it was such a big deal to me that I knew I was going to write a song about it. Mm-hmm. I was like, I have to do something to tribute.
Yeah. Because how did he pass away again?
He had a heart arrhythmia. Okay. And he had really bad heartburn all the time, and he had no idea what it was from. He thought it was just because he ate spicy food and stuff. And our family's not too well off, and we never really had health insurance and stuff. Sure. So he wasn't ever able to go to the doctor, and he was living with my cousin in Colorado, which my mom had moved out to Colorado at the same time. So he was with my mom kind of and stuff. And yeah, he just had really bad like heart problems that he had no idea about. Like he would get chest pains but think they were just kind of whatever, like nothing too crazy. And the heart arrhythmia, his heart would beat really irregularly. And one night his heart just flat out just stopped beating in his sleep, mm-hmm. and it just never started again. Right. And so he just
passed away in his sleep.
Essentially had I guess it's a heart attack.
Sure.
And his heart just stopped, and my cousin went in the room to wake him up for work, and he just.
Were you on tour at the time?
I was on tour, yeah.
Yeah.
And it was like it hit me like a freight train.
Of course. Because you live out here obviously in California, but you said so your parents got divorced.
Okay. Got divorced, yeah.
And so your mom took your brother out to California or out to Colorado.
Well, they had moved there separately. My mom had moved out there, and then my brother had moved out there for work, and he was living with my cousin. Got it. They were there, but they weren't there together.
Okay. And do you so in California do you have your own place, or do you live with your dad now?
Well, my dad actually passed away too.
But that's right.
Yeah,
I completely forgot about that.
It's all right. I live with my
because your dad passed away after your brother, correct?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So but I mean, when he was out here, were you living with him?
I was living with him. Yes.
Okay.
Got
it.
So it's me and my dad, and then my brother and my mom, and then I had moved into a place with my friend, like my longtime friend.
Oh, okay, got it.
So I didn't live with my dad, but we lived like he lived in Hawthorne, and I lived in El Segundo.
So right.
Same area.
Next to each other.
Yeah.
Got it. So now, so your brother passed away. How long ago? You said?
It's for 3 years now.
3 years.
Yeah.
And then your dad passed away within a year.
Yeah,
correct?
like last year. Yeah.
Right. The illustration, especially when you are a quote unquote pseudo public figure, and obviously most of your lyrics deal with obviously like positivity and like pulling yourself up with your own bootstraps and like the ability to put on like a strong enough face to be able to like do what you do. Yeah. Like at the lowest of points, was it just like I don't even know how I'm able to kind of put one foot in front of the other. Yeah. Like
I definitely thought about just walking.
Yeah.
Like life hit me then.
Right.
And up until then, nothing nothing serious had happened. Like nothing brought me back to reality.
Of course.
I was in this bubble dream state, like just like, oh, this is
yeah, dude. I'm in Japan. I'm in Australia.
Yeah, I'm living the life. You know, this is cool. And then
right.
You know, I had never thought about death, and I never thought about dying. You know, I always kind of assumed that everyone that I knew and loved would be around forever, and everything would be perfect. And
did you have any? Was there any religious affiliations within your family at all that were? Like,
no, we weren't like a religious. Both my parents, were, I guess, Christian. They both believed in God, and did that kind of thing.
But you weren't raised with anything where it's like, John, you got to go to church every day.
Exactly.
No. So that I could easily see why the context of you being like. Yeah, like they'll be around until they're 95, and then like it'll be good. It'll be fine.
I just assumed, that was just my mentality, and once my brother had passed, I realized that how really fragile life is, and how little time that we should spend doing stuff that we just absolutely hate,
Yeah.
Like I'd rather be poor doing what I love than be rich doing something I hate. Of
course.
Like, I don't ever want to spend 1 second of this life unnecessarily unhappy.
Sure.
Yeah. Like no one's ever going to be happy all the time. Obviously, stuff's going to happen. But
you need the pursuit of like joy and happiness and all those things where it's just like or not even that. The pursuit of joy and happiness in and of itself, I believe, is obviously it's like great. That's what everyone should strive to. But the idea of like fun, like I got to be having fun all the time. Like, no, you don't. Like. What the fuck do you do when fun is not there?
Yeah.
Like you just go in this level of depression. It's like no, like it has to balance itself out. Like that's those things that you've experienced, because I mean, a kid never wants to bury their parent and or a younger sibling. Those are like timeline wise, that's not supposed to work out like that.
It's gnarly, man.
I'm sure these are things that you're still wrestling around with in regards to like, do you feel like, oh, I wish I had that time away back from them, like in the sense of like, oh, I wish I, spent more time with them. Like, are there any like lingering regrets from that perspective?
I wouldn't say regrets because I know what I did made my brother and my dad both very proud.
That's
so
good.
I don't regret it, but I obviously wish I had more time to spend with both of them, as anybody would. And they were both so sudden. They were both completely just one day alive, one day not.
Right.
Like not getting sick, not going to the hospital, not like
no
grieving.
Lead up.
There's no grieving process. There's no like there's no acceptance process. It was just like bam, gone.
Yeah, my life is utterly changed.
So it's like that's difficult. It was a difficult thing for me to have to deal with, and everybody at some point in their life has to deal with death. It's not something that is unavoidable to everybody. And I just remember that being the first time where I actually thought about like. Should I keep doing this? Am I squandering like should I be spending my time differently? Like should I be doing this life like a different way?
Right.
And like when my brother passed away, like it had broke my parents up. Obviously like you never think that you're going to see your kid pass away. Like, it's not something that you're ever going to have to deal with.
No.
So they were broken up about it, and I talked to my dad. I was like, hey dad, like. It was just me and my brother, so I was an only child now, and I was all they had. And I was like, I know this is hard for both of us, for me, you, and mom, and I'm thinking about just hanging it up, and just kind of just starting a family and kind of just doing my normal quote unquote normal life stuff.
Yeah.
And he's like, Jonathan, I don't ever want you to spend 1 second of this life not doing what you want to do. Don't do anything because society makes you want to do it, or because you think you have to do it, or because someone else is telling you to do it. This is your life, and you need to do what makes you happy.
Right.
And that was like the best advice my dad has ever. I
Sure.
mean, my dad is a very smart guy. Like, he gave me tons of amazing advice, but that advice in particular is what the reason why I'm still playing in the band.
Right.
Because I was going to walk away. I was going to be like, this is too much for me. Like, I can't do this. I cannot be away. I cannot hear news like that ever again.
Yeah. Well, that in a way, that was like, that was basically like his permission slip to you of being like no, like I'm not going to sit here and be like, you need to come home for me, because that could end up obviously, making you unhappy, and in turn, like, despising your father later on, like whatever, like
whatever the repercussions of it were. Yeah.
Right.
And he was proud of what I did and all the work I put in, and he knew the progress that we made. And at the time, we were starting to work on our newest album, Get What You Give, and we were signing Epitaph and all this stuff, and he was just like, you can't walk from this, man.
Yeah.
You worked.
This is your opportunity.
You worked years for this.
Yeah.
There are millions of people in this world who would kill to be in your position. He's like,
Sure.
you can't walk from that, man.
Right.
You got to see this through.
It's great that he obviously had, like you said, had that wisdom to be able to like give you sound advice at that point, and not like, because ultimately he could have been selfish and just be like, yeah, like I see what you're doing, like, yeah, of course, come home, like I want you home, but he had the wherewithal to be like no, this is, he had the appropriate perspective, and so like obviously when he passed, was it one of those things like those words, even though he wasn't there, just completely echoed true, where it was like your brother's passing hit you hard to where you wanted to reevaluate things, and it obviously your dad's passing, I'm sure, hit you, just as hard, if not harder. But then you also probably had that voice in your head where it was just like now this is kind of basically for my dad.
Yeah. Well, I had come home for tour when my brother passed.
Right.
And when my father passed, I had literally, we had landed in Australia.
Yeah.
Doing one of the biggest tours we've ever done, and playing to thousands and thousands of kids. We were going on tour with a very big Australian band. Right. And played our first show, it was great. Went to bed, like the best mood ever, like this tour is gonna be great. Yeah. I wake up, we got a missed call from every person in my family. Yeah. And I knew. I knew. Right. I knew what it was, because I had gone through the same thing.
Right, it just washed over you.
I knew what it was. Right. I didn't go home. Yeah. My grandparents, my dad's mom didn't understand why I needed to be on the road. Like she didn't understand. She's like, you're not on a plane right now? You need to be here. And I was like, she didn't get it, And, but I knew that my father got it. I knew that my father wanted me, even with his passing, wanted me to finish that tour. Yeah. He was so proud of the fact that we had people that care about what I was doing on the other side of the world.
A world away, right.
He would never, ever want me to let them down. Yeah. He would never want them.
Dude, that's fucking insane that you had to sit there and, like, on the phone with your grandma be like, I am not coming home. Yeah. Like, and to, like, I'm sure she was heated, like you said, heated about it.
She was broken up. My whole family was. They didn't get it. But my dad was kind of, not the outcast, but my dad was the only musician in the family. So sure. He got things that no one else did. Exactly. Right. So no one else could have ever understood.
Yeah. It's just insane that because, I mean, obviously, when traumatic things happen to families, you see true sides kind of come out of places that you never expected, like it was just like, oh wow, like I didn't think that person would react that way or whatever. But for you to feel that exerted pressure where it's like the person that you would be able to rely on the most, like obviously wasn't there, just be like, oh, but like he gets it. Like, he got it, but he can't, like, that's because my father passed away, like, I mean, I think it's on five years now. And it's like the times that I miss him the most are the times, because he didn't live in Southern California, he lived in Vegas, are the times that it's like, you just want to go to him for advice. Exactly. You just want to pick up the phone and call.
It's crazy because I've done that a few times. I've picked up the phone and call my dad and be like, oh yeah,
that won't go anywhere. Yeah.
And I think those were the hardest. That was the hardest for me. Right. Of everything that happened and all the scenarios I've ever been in, instances I've ever been in, that's always the worst. Right. That always shook me.
Sure. Right. There's just those moments, because it's like those individual moments of like, because for me, I always usually called my dad in like, crisis, like when I was having some sort of crisis of faith and needed advice, like, or I wanted to tell him something positive, Of
course.
And so it was like, because I don't know, that just seems like a natural father-son. Like,
yeah, of course.
And so, yeah, like when you were like, oh man, like who the fuck do I talk to in this moment of crisis or whatever? And to kind of flip things to a more positive, because I mean, obviously it's like, you're always going to miss him, but the fact that you like, I think that's so special what he said to you, because like I said, it is that sort of like permission slip that just like, John, no matter what happens, like, see this through, man. Yeah. And I'm sure that gives you like clarity of mind to know that like, well, I'm going to do this.
Yeah. I mean, he essentially said, hey, like, he basically told me, hey, having a normal life is going to be there. He's like, it's not super glamorous. Right. It's like, you can always come back to it. Sure. Do this right now. Yeah. You're not going to get another chance. Right. Have fun with it. Right. When it's over, your life is going to be here for you. Yeah, so you're gonna experience normal life. It's going to be here. Right. Whether it's now or whenever. It's gonna be here. Don't worry about it.
Totally. Yeah.
That's seriously the reason why I'm still going.
Right. Yeah. That's seizing that moment. And the kind of to wrap things up. The the idea that, like I was saying, where you guys are at right now, it's like it's just weird, because it's like you look at whatever, you look at a band like Poison the Well, as you were mentioning earlier, where it's just like, to us, that was like when they were at their peak, you were just like, nothing could get bigger than this. And then it's like, then you see where, fast forward 10 years later now to where it's like you're seeing bands like, yourself and, other bands that are, even much larger than what you guys do, where you're just like this is insane. And like, how do you guys within the band obviously not let the, sort of like the business pressures and like obviously the music industry as a whole kind of like, like wear you down to where it's just like, man, because there are many moments in your music business life that you guys could have been like crushed by that pressure and just crushed by all of the shit that got thrown on your shoulders. Like, did you guys just kind of try to keep a level head about it? Like,
yeah, it's. I mean, you've been on both on the band side and the business side of the music industry. You know the kind of stuff that comes, and it's the swings are kind of gnarly. Like there's things that you never thought that you'd have to be a part of being in a like I want to play in a band. I want to sing. That's I don't want to deal with all this stuff. I don't want to think about this stuff and and that stuff comes and or like even on the other side of that, like being in a band and looking up to these bands and then going on tour and then kind of realizing like now that your band is bigger than that band ever was, and you thought that band was the biggest band in the entire planet,
of course,
and that's like it's weird to balance out to kind of like to be like, yeah, like we do play these bigger shows, we are pretty successful, but I'm still just a normal kid, I'm still that kid.
Of course.
10 years ago,
right?
I was excited to go to shows and see bands and stuff, like I'm still that guy at being in the front row, and it's like, I don't know, it's just it's kind of, you kind of just got to take everything as it comes,
Yeah.
And kind of just, I think for me, I think the reason why we are as far along as we are is because we don't buy into kind of the industry standard and kind of be like, okay, well, this is the progression for you. You guys have to do this, or this has to be your next record, or, you need to tour these bands or do this. And we've never kind of always done our own thing and told ourselves that we'll play with any bands, we'll play in front of any kind of people, and we'll just do our thing. And if people are into it, they're into it. If they're not, they're not.
Right.
And that's the core of what our band is. If people like our band, awesome. If they don't, then that's not their thing. There's no point in trying to change our sound to pick up all these other people. Like we're not a band that kind of like. I guess we're kind of lucky in the sense that we kind of wrote Fearing the Fallen Ones and we did the kind of melodic hardcore stuff, melodic metalcore, heavy, whatever you want to call it, stuff, and then it got popular.
Yeah. You hit a crest of a wave that was able to kind of
and we weren't a band that was following a trend, know? And we got lucky in the fact that that's kind of where music had headed,
know?
And we owe a lot of it to our peers and bands in the same genre as us, and not kind of just making the music that they do and kind of getting the people who necessarily would never listen to the Ghost Inside into us by transitive property. I like this band is kind of sounds like this band, kind of into this band. I like Ghost Inside now.
Right.
And it's like, for us, that was a big thing because we toured one of our very first tours, we toured with metal, death metal bands. And we were like, what are we doing? Is this even helping us? After a while, we saw, these metalheads kind of coming to these shows and, God, this is going to be terrible. And then we'd come back on our next tour and those same people would be there.
Wow.
And it'd be like, whoa, like we're making fans doing it.
Like, this worked.
Yeah. So it's like, we just kind of had the same kind of mantra, I guess. It's kind of just play our songs, and if people are into it, they're into it. If they're not, there's no sense in trying to be like, oh, we can change for you. We can make it work. We can make it so you like us. Like,
well, I think that really comes through, like that sort of core mantra, because it's like for anything you guys do musically, whether or not it's like, oh, hey, I'm gonna have clean singing on this one song on the record, or this is the way that we're musically evolving. It doesn't seem forced, and ultimately, I think people, not only in the timing of the music that you guys are playing, but I think like people at this point, especially from just like the larger sort of pop culture perspective, people are looking for like honest visions where it's just like, you look at you look at something like, whatever, a stand-up comedian like Louis C.K., where it's just like, the dude has been in stand-up comedy for 30 plus years, and now people are gravitating towards him because it's just like, oh, he's showing us what he really is on his television show. And like that honesty. And it's like, I think that it's really important for bands to kind of have like just that, like you said, that core mantra, because you do see a lot of it just get very easily thrown away when all those other things start to kind of infiltrate, where it's just like, a band just immediately throws aside like any sort of, feelings of attachment to a scene or like where they came from or whatever for, fame and fortune. I use that, in air quotes or whatever.
Of course.
But yeah, so it's like I think that's like kind of the the honesty is what people are injecting into you guys and like feeling projected out back towards them, And so it's it's just cool to see that all kind of manifest itself,
Yeah. Thanks, man. It's been fun. It's been good. Like I said, I've far surpassed anything I've ever thought I'd ever do in the music industry,
right.
and to be as far along as we are, it's really incredible.
Well, all you wanted to do was play the El Segundo Teen Center.
That's seriously all I wanted to do was play the Teen Center for my friends. That's it.
Everything else, you're just like, oh, weird. I guess we're doing this.
Bonus, dude. Bonus.
Well, I really appreciate you hanging out and coming over and making this happen after months and months of missing each other.
I know. I am so sorry, man.
You don't even apologize.
So that was Jon. Great guy. It's funny because I try to think of a different descriptor for all of these people that I have on the show, but they're all great. They're nice, and it's just nice to be able to talk to a person and have them obviously turn off any sort of like press quotation soundbite-ness and just have that conversation. So the Ghost Inside is going to be touring, and they'll probably be in your city like next week or the week after that. They're relentless when it comes to that, so check everything out. I personally really like the band and what they do, and now that you have a better understanding of Jon, hopefully you will like it as well. Visit 100wordspodcast.com, propertyofzach.com. The editor for this episode is Tom Richfield. He's just the greatest. I wish I could hug him on a daily basis, but alas, I can't. He's in the United Kingdom, so and I don't even know if he would like that every day if I were to hug him, but that's neither here nor there. Until next week, everybody, some amazing shows coming up. We have Steve Brodsky from Cave-In, Mutoid Man. We have Dan Lambton from Real Friends, and so much other awesome stuff. So I can't wait to share with you, and I'll talk to you next week. Be safe.
I know